The story begins as we see two kids drawing and playing together. The girl, Yai, draws a picture of a prince and princess and excitedly shows it to her friend Takumi, saying she wants to live like them. However, he calls her an idiot, saying that one can only be a princess by birth. After this, the scene shifts to many years later where we see an adult Yai waking up on a bus. She notices a pregnant woman nearby and offers her seat. The woman refuses, but our heroine knows that she's very uncomfortable, so she gets off the bus to give up her seat. Outside, she finds out the next bus won't arrive for 20 minutes, so she starts running. Later, she arrives on time for her part-time job at a cafe. There, her co-worker Misha gives her some cookies and thanks her for covering her shift. The manager then arrives and hands them their salaries and schedules for the next week. Unfortunately, Misha is informed that she's being let go, as they only need one worker among the two. This makes her really worried as she's a single mom who struggles financially. Yai senses her distress and decides to take a drastic step. She quits her job so that Misha can continue working. In the next scene, we see a grown-up Takumi who has become a successful architect. He meets with an important client, Mr. Nikitani, and impresses him with his design. After this, Takumi gives him a present since his birthday is near. However, Mr. Nikitani insists it's not enough and asks him to attend his party along with his wife. This makes our hero anxious, but he assures him that he'll be there. That evening, Yai meets with her boyfriend who drops the upsetting news that he's moving to Australia for work. Although she's distraught, she accepts his decision and the two mutually decide to end their relationship. On her way home, she thinks about her ex-boyfriend and begins to break down in tears. Suddenly, and in her haste, she slips and falls on the road. Out of nowhere, Takumi arrives to help her, and both are shocked to see each other after 10 years. After this, he brings her to his place where she changes and puts her clothes in the dryer. Noticing a ring on his finger, Yai assumes he has a wife and asks if it's okay to be there. However, he clarifies that he isn't married and it's just a work-related pretense. They then catch up on their lives, and Yai is proud of him for his achievement. When he asks about her life, she gets sad and says she quit her job today and that her boyfriend also left her. Hearing this, Takumi proposes she be his fake wife for 6 months in exchange for accommodation and financial support. He explains that one of his clients, Mr. Nikitani, is old-fashioned and prefers working with married men only, so Yai needs to play the role until his daughter takes over the company in 6 months. Although the offer is very lucrative, our girl becomes scared and immediately refuses it. The next morning, she returns to her flat and her roommate shares the good news that she's getting married. Yai is happy for her friend, but it also means that she has to find a new place to stay. Having no other option, she calls Takumi and agrees to his offer. The latter acts very cold and invites her to his house. However, as soon as he hangs up, he begins giggling with happiness and excitement. He then takes out her childhood picture and promises that he will turn her into a princess. Following this, the scene cuts to 20 years prior where we see a young Yai buying a balloon for herself. Moments later, she notices a small child crying. Being the kind-natured girl that she is, Yai gives the balloon to him, claiming that she already has one at home. Takumi notices this and says that she's always been a liar and only worries about other people. Later, he places a balloon at her house, but she gives it to a nearby guard, saying it must belong to another kid. It turns out that Takumi has always had a crush on her, but she liked another guy named Kento. The three used to be very close, so Takumi never dared confess his feeling. When they reached high school, Kento suddenly moved to Singapore with his family. This deeply upsets our girl, but she can't do anything to stop him. Before leaving, Kento texts Takumi asking him to take care of her and make her a princess. After high school, Takumi pursues architecture and loses contact with his friends. He works hard to fulfill his dreams and finally establishes his own company. After becoming rich and successful, he finally decides to confess his feelings to Yai. So he buys 2 rings for them and goes to her place to propose. However, shockingly, he notices her kissing another man. That evening, he goes to a bar with friends and ends up drinking a lot. He then removes the ring from his finger and apologizes to Kento for not being able to take care of Yai. The following morning, Takumi's business partner Shindo returns the ring he left at the bar last night. Our hero denies it belonging to him, but Shindo hands it to him anyway. Afterwards, he gives a presentation to Mr. Nikitani and his daughter Remy. They are pleased with his designs, but Mr. Nikitani says that unmarried people are immature and unreliable to work with. Hearing this, Remy gets up and tries to convince her father to let go of such prejudices. But when he doesn't listen to her, Takumi pulls out the ring and claims he's married, which shocks everyone. After the meeting, Shindo and Remy approach him saying that he shouldn't have lied like that. But Takumi insists that it's the truth and he just wants to keep it private. In the present, Yai arrives at his house with all her stuff. Afterward, he cooks a meal for them which embarrasses her because she's very bad in the kitchen. However, he informs her that she's not his housekeeper, so she shouldn't be worried. After their meal, Yai grabs a notepad and a pen while Takumi explains her role as his fake wife. He tells her that she will only have to do this for 6 months until Remy takes over her father's company. He also informs her about his best friend and business partner Shindo, with whom he has worked with since the beginning of his career. He then gives her information about Mr. Nikitani and Remy. Since the old man is his most important client, losing their deal could be disastrous for his company. After this, he gives her a ring to put on and teaches her how to talk and behave. He informs her that Mr. Nikitani's birthday party is coming soon, and she will be playing her role as his fake wife that evening. Hearing all this, Yai becomes nervous and immediately starts practicing how to act like a wife. In the next scene, it's the day of Mr. Nikitani's party, and Takumi buys a beautiful dress for her. Together, they head to the party and meet the old man, who is happy to finally meet his wife. He's very impressed by Yai and teases Takumi for hiding such a beautiful wife. When they step aside to discuss work, Shindo shows up and excitedly hugs Yai. He says he's happy to finally meet her and even takes a selfie with her. However, Remy suspects something is wrong. She can't believe that Takumi would marry such an ordinary woman. She then tries to intimidate Yai by telling her she's not like the other girls Takumi has dated in the past. But before she can say more, Shindo pulls her away from there. After the party, Yai and Takumi head to a rooftop where he shows her the first building he designed. He tells her that he became an architect because of her and that she is the source of his inspiration. Meanwhile, Shindo drinks with Remy, who is still suspicious about Takumi's marriage. So she asks him to investigate this matter, and he agrees. The following day, he visits Takumi at his office and says he wants to celebrate his marriage. When our hero tries to ignore him, Shindo inquires if his marriage is fake. He says he wants to visit Takumi's house because he hasn't been there in a year. Having no other choice, Takumi reluctantly invites Shindo for lunch at his place. Later at home, he talks with Yai and informs her that Shindo is suspicious of them, so he's invited him for lunch this weekend. She asks him why he hasn't told his best friend the truth, but Takumi explains that he doesn't want to get him in trouble if the truth comes out. He then reveals that Shindo is the lifeline of his company, and all their important clients, including Remy, were introduced by him. Meanwhile, Shindo informs Remy that he's going to Takumi's house for dinner. She says that she wants to join as well, but he refuses. Remy still doubts Takumi and says that if he's lying, she will cut him off from her company. However, he advises her not to make such a hasty decision, saying it's not that big a deal. The next day, Takumi and Yai decide to fix the place and make it look like she's been living there for a year. They head out shopping, where she buys various household items that she likes. After this, they completely change the look of the house, and Takumi even makes a picture of their honeymoon using Photoshop. In the following scene, Shindo is seen buying flowers to visit his friend's place. During this, he reminisces about the first time he met Takumi and how he instantly fell in love with him. Despite realizing that a romantic future between them is not possible, he constantly stood by his side and supported him. He then recalls how devastated he was when he found out Takumi was married. After this, Shindo heads to Takumi's house thinking it doesn't matter if his marriage is true or not. He will never be with him, and that's the harsh truth. After he rings the doorbell, Yai opens the door and welcomes him inside. Shindo enters and notices that the house has changed drastically since his last visit. He looks at the fake honeymoon picture, but finds nothing unusual. Later, they sit down to eat, and Shindo is excited to try Yai's dishes. However, since she can't cook, our hero prepared the entire meal. As soon as Shindo takes his first bite, he realizes that it's cooked by his friend. He asks Yai what she made, and she brings him a radish recipe, which is the only thing she can make. Surprisingly, Shindo likes it and says it reminds him of his home. He then asks about her family, and she shares that her mother passed away when she was just 5 years old. Hearing this, he feels bad and says he understands how hard her life must have been. As they delve deeper into conversation, Shindo speculates that since they're childhood friends, they must be each other's first love. Takumi replies that his first love is Yae, but her first love was a guy named Kento who used to be their friend. Yae tries to say something, but at that moment, our hero receives a call from work and has to leave. After this, Shindo and Yae spend some time alone talking about their lives. During their conversation, she assures him that if he ever feels lonely, he can talk to her anytime, which makes him happy. When Takumi returns, the three resume eating and have a wonderful time together. Shindo is delighted by their warm hospitality, and he congratulates them on their marriage. After that, he sends their honeymoon picture to Remy, saying their marriage is real. Just then, she's approached by a man named Jun, who turns out to be Takumi's former boss. They begin talking about our hero, and she shows him a photo of his honeymoon. As soon as Jun sees it, he realizes that it's Photoshop. He reveals that the building behind them was constructed only a few months earlier, but the picture is claimed to have been taken a year ago. He then informs Remy that it's all because of her father's ridiculous beliefs. She tries to defend herself, saying Takumi should have told her the truth, but Jun thinks maybe he didn't want to make her an accomplice in his lie. The following day, he surprises Takumi at his office and starts teasing him. He also insists on meeting his wife, and our hero has no choice but to agree. Later, they arrive at his house, where Jun meets Yae. He tries to figure out whether the marriage is real or not, so he sends Takumi outside to buy dessert, and using this opportunity, begins pressuring Yae to tell the truth. He picks up the honeymoon picture and claims it's a fake. However, she calms herself and explains that she accidentally deleted their honeymoon pictures of Dubai. So when Shindo visited their house, they edited this photo to avoid suspicion. Just then, Takumi returns, and Jun tells him that his wife is very smart and she passed the test. After he leaves, our hero realizes that he came to find out the truth, but he doesn't understand why. The following day, Takumi takes Yae to visit a new resort designed by him. She seems very nervous, so he encourages her to be confident. A while later, Remy also arrives and she immediately starts insulting Yae. However, our heroine doesn't feel intimidated. She instead informs the bitch that one of her earrings is missing. This sends the latter into a state of panic, prompting her to walk away. Later, some women approach Yae and invite her for a drink. As they talk, they claim she's very fortunate to have married Takami because he's so rich and handsome. When our hero overhears this conversation, he walks up to Yae and brings her closer to him. He then announces that he loves her and considers himself lucky to have her as his wife. Hearing this, Remy gets upset and leaves, but surprisingly, she discovers her earring right outside the door. That night, Yae and Takami go to bed together, and he opens the curtain to show her the stars. He then confesses that when he said she was his first love, he meant it. Hearing this, Yae begins to blush, but their moment is interrupted when Takumi receives a text from Remy, who claims her bathroom shower isn't working. Our hero heads to her room to help, but finds out she's just lying. She offers him drinks and reveals she knows Yae isn't his wife. After this, she pins him to the bed and tries to seduce him. She tells him that she will pretend to be his wife, but he refuses and gets up. She angrily asks why he can't just marry her, as she is rich and beautiful, and it will also be perfect for their business. However, he doesn't answer her anything and simply walks out of the room. The next morning, Yae wakes up to find Takumi sleeping on the sofa. She remembers what he said the night before and gets nervous. She then walks outside where she notices Remy is leaving. She offers to help her carry her belongings, but the bitch gets angry and tells her to leave her alone. Regardless, our caring heroine takes some of her stuff and walks alongside her. After walking for a while, they both become tired and sit down. Remy abruptly questions the girl why she always lies about helping others and tries to be a saint. However, Yae says that she just likes helping others and doesn't seek credit. After this, Remy begins to cry and admits that she has feelings for Takumi and that it's difficult to see him with someone else. Yae gives her a handkerchief to wipe her tears and says that she understands her situation. She then advises her to accept the situation as it is, and life will reward her someday. Hearing this, Remy finally realizes her mistakes and apologizes. Later, when the two return to the resort together, Takumi is surprised to see them being friendly. Remy then apologizes to him for last night and tries to walk away, but Takumi stops her. He says she's very important to him and he doesn't want to lose her as a friend. He claims he may have lied about certain things, but it was just to protect her. Hearing this, Remy says that she understands and smiles. The following day, Takumi is in the office with Shindo, and both are very happy that the women have become friends. Just then, an employee approaches Takumi and asks his permission to use a photo of him and Yae for an advertisement. Our hero agrees, and he sends the photo to Yae as well, saying it's going to be published. He assures her that since her face is half covered, no one will recognize her. Sometime later, Yae's former roommate visits her and gives her a wedding invitation. This makes our girl happy, and her friend thanks her for all the love and support she gave her when they lived together. During their conversation, she asks Yae about how her marriage is going. The latter reveals that she feels strange sensations when she is near Takumi, and her heart begins to beat faster. Hearing this, her friend just laughs and tells her that she has fallen in love. That night, after Takumi takes a shower, he notices that the bathroom is spotlessly clean. Realizing that Yae did it, he walks outside and asks her not to bother in household chores. He also says that he'll hire a housekeeper. As he continues yammering, our girl can barely concentrate as he is shirtless, so she asks him to put on some clothes first. Later, when Takumi comes back dressed, he notices a wedding card on the table. Yae gets scared and she quickly apologizes for bringing her friend without his permission. However, he tells her not to worry and assures her that she can invite any friend anytime. After that, he mentions that she has to work tomorrow because they're having lunch with Mr. Nikitani. The following day, they both go to the restaurant to have lunch with the old man. Impressed by Yae's kind and innocent nature, he tells Takumi that he's a very fortunate man. During their conversation, he recalls how his wife was there to support and love him during his struggling times. As they continue talking, he receives a call and steps outside for a few moments. The couple then engages in a private conversation conversation, during which Yai mentions that Mr. Nikitani is a nice person. She understands that he likes working with married people because he values family and wants the same for others. Later, as the men are chatting outside, they unexpectedly meet Takumi's childhood friend, Kento. Mr. Nikitani recognizes him and praises him for his social work and help with underprivileged people. However, Takumi is annoyed by his presence since he knows that Yai used to have feelings for him. At that moment, she also arrives, and Kento is shocked to learn that she is married to Takumi. However, he congratulates them on their marriage and hugs them. In the next scene, the three friends can be seen together reminiscing about their old days. Later, Yai speaks privately with Takumi and suggests that they tell him the truth, but he refuses. He doesn't want anyone to know that they're having a fake marriage. That evening, before he leaves, Kento thanks Takumi for taking care of Yai and making her a princess. The next morning during breakfast, she keeps talking about Kento and praises him. This makes our hero very jealous, so he decides that he won't let Kento come in between them. When he gets to the office, his employees excitedly show him that the picture of him with Yai has gone viral and received lots of love. Meanwhile, at home, she also sees the post and starts blushing. Later, Remy calls Takumi and questions why he didn't introduce his childhood friend Kento to her. Our hero apologizes and promises that he will do that very soon. He then decides to organize a house party to bring everyone together. However, on the day of the party, he gets overloaded with work and can't make it home. Meanwhile, Yai, Remy, Shindo, and Kento enjoy the party and have a great time. When Takumi finally arrives home, the guests have already left. He asks how the night went, and she tells him everything. She also excitedly shows him a bracelet that was gifted to her by Kento. Unfortunately, this only angers Takumi, prompting him to go straight to his room. The following day at the office, he thinks about the recent events and gets upset. He texts her saying he needs to talk about something important when he gets home. Meanwhile, she meets with a woman named Sachi who used to be Takumi's high school girlfriend. Upon noticing the ring on her finger, Sachi starts crying and says that the rumors are true. She apologizes and leaves, but Yai invites her to the house and comforts her. During their conversation, Sachi reveals that when she proposed to Takami, he accepted out of pity, and she knew that he never truly loved her. Despite this, she held on to the hope that he might eventually realize her love and come back to her, which never happened. She then talks about how hurt she was when she found out about the marriage. Saying this, she decides to leave, but Yai stops her and asks if there's anything she can do to help her. In response, Sachi says that she would be happy if Yai would split up with Takami. After a while, Takami receives a message from Yai informing him that she's unwell and won't be able to talk that night. Worried, he immediately rushes home with some medications, only to notice 2 glasses on the kitchen counter. The next morning, he asks Yai how she's doing, and she says she's fine. He then asks if anyone was there yesterday, but she lies that it was just her former roommate. Takumi sees the expression on her face and knows straight away that she's lying. She then asks what he wanted to talk about last night, but he brushes it off, saying it's nothing. That afternoon, he meets Kento for lunch and asks if he came over to his house the day before. When the latter denies it, Takumi gets worried and wonders what she's hiding. At home, Yai looks at a photo of her with Takumi and decides to delete it from her phone. She then recalls how upset Sachi was and becomes worried for her. Later, she gets a call from Shindo, who says that Takami seems to be very upset. Our girl promises to find out what's happened and hangs up. Moments later, she receives another call from Remy, who is also worried about him. That evening, when Takumi gets home, Yai tells him that their contract is ending soon. She thanks him for supporting and caring for her when she had nowhere else to turn. This makes him emotional, and he decides to confess his feelings. He hugs her from behind and says that their relationship doesn't have to end with the contract. He says that meeting her that day was not a coincidence, since he had been searching for her for the past few years. He eventually tells her that he loves her and wants to marry her for real. After this, he leans in to kiss her, but she refuses him and walks away. The following day, Takumi learns from his friends that his ex, Sachi, was asking for his dress. So he calls her and asks if she was at his house. She admits to being there and says that Yai told her the truth about their fake marriage. Takumi says it makes no difference because his feelings for her are genuine. However, Sachi shares that Yai told her that she doesn't love him and she is only doing this for the contract. Hearing this, our hero feels hurt and he hangs up the call. Later, we see Yai and her friend in a store looking for wedding dresses. As they leave, Takami arrives to meet her and the two go for a walk. He tells her that since they met, they have shared many beautiful moments which he is grateful for. He feels good around her and thanks her for helping him. However, he also understands that her Prince Charming is Kento, not him. So he removes her ring and says she is free to be with whomever she wants. Hearing this, Yai bursts into tears, but he comforts her and says she won't have to sacrifice her life for others anymore. Afterward, Takumi comes clean about his marriage to Shindo and Remi and apologizes to them for lying. They forgive him, but they also realize that his feelings for Yai are genuine. The two friends advise him not to let her go, but Takami says it's too late. He then goes to Mr. Nikitani and tells him the truth as well. The old man is disappointed, but he understands that it's all due to his unreasonable demands. He doesn't blame Takumi and says he will think about dealing with his company in the future. A few days later, Yai is getting ready to leave when Remi and Shindo arrive at the house. They believe it's a serious matter because Takumi hasn't shown up for work in days. Together, they search his room for any clues about his whereabouts. While going through his things, our heroine discovers a box that includes her childhood drawings and their rings. This makes her realize how much he loves her, and she starts crying. Following this, Yai admits to her friends that she loves Takami, but she's only doing this to avoid hurting his ex. In response, Remi tells her that she cannot live her life only thinking about other people. She tells her how much Takami loves her and asks her to think about both of their happiness as well. Hearing this, Yai heads out to look for Takami, and she eventually finds him at a railway crossing. He asks her not to follow him since it will only cause more pain. He also apologizes for not being able to make her a princess. However, she says she doesn't need anything else and just wants to be with him and marry him. At that moment, a train passes between them, and when it clears, Yai realizes that he's gone. The next evening, Kento meets with Takami and asks where he's been. Our hero says that he's been staying at a hotel and doesn't want to return home. Kento then asks why he didn't pursue Yai immediately after he went to Singapore. Takami claims that he didn't want to beat him empty-handed, so he worked hard and became successful before proposing to her. Hearing this, Kento just laughs and claims that the prince in Yai's drawing has always been Takumi. After this, he reveals that he proposed to her for marriage, which she accepted. The news shocks our hero, but nonetheless, he congratulates his friend before leaving. Days later, he finally returns home, so Shindo arrives and asks why he's been avoiding him. Takumi admits that he doesn't want to involve him in his lie and risk his career in case Mr. Nikitani cuts them off. But Shindo gets upset and says it's not up to him to decide which side he wants to be on. After that, he reveals that it's Yai and Kento's wedding day. He then advises him to confront his feelings rather than run away from them. Later, Takami reaches out to Sachi and invites her to meet. He apologizes for dating her and hurting her feelings, although he was in love with Yai. He asks for her forgiveness, and this makes her very emotional. She admits that she lied to him about Yai not having feelings for him. The truth is, she's always been in love with Takami, but never dared admit it. In the end, Sachi advises him to go after Yai and win her over before it's too late. Hearing this, Takami thanks her and hurries to the wedding venue where Kento and Yai are about to get married. As they're about to exchange vows, he shows up and tells Yai that he has loved her since they were kids. He tells her that she's always been a princess since birth, and no one needs to make her one. After this, he asks Kento to take care of her and starts to leave. However, Yai stops him and reveals that it was just a drama. Takumi is shocked, but Kento takes off his coat and gives it to him. After this, our cute couple hug each other and they get happily married.